Hello and welcome to my video about your research project. I am so glad you're here to watch this video, and I hope that this will help you with your research proposal. So we're going to walk through all the pieces, the 5 pieces of your research project. We'll get started now. So there are 5 sections or chapters, depending on what you're doing, to a research project. If this is your dissertation, you're going to have 5 chapters. If this is a paper that you're writing, a research project, you're going to have 5 sections. If this is a research proposal, you just do the first 3 of the 5 sections or chapters. So you'll see here, it has the introduction, literature review, method, results, and discussion. We're going to walk through each one of these. Okay, in your introduction of your research project, we want a basic introduction. Why are you doing this? What is so important about this study that someone should read about it? So you want to address the problem. What is it that you're trying to solve for? You could include your research question or a problem statement here. But basically, this is a general overview of what this project's about. Now, a lot of this will be repetitive of sections 2 and 3, but that's part of the process. So you want to have your objectives clearly stated of what the purpose is of this project and what you, if it's your proposal, what you hope to achieve with it. If this is your actual research project and you've already done the research, you can state the objectives as this is what this research has done, how it will help with theoretical or practical continuity. You can address the significance of the study. And in the literature review video, we talk a lot about the significance of the study. So please watch the next video so that you'll see, you want to make sure that your study has some purpose, that it's desirable of other people's attention. It's not something that you just brainstormed and did, but you've actually done the research. There's either recommendations to extend the field of study, or you're filling a gap in the literature. You want to address your scope and limitations too within this introduction so that people know what you are looking at and what you're not looking at. And then you can also define terms here if necessary, and the organization of your study. So that may seem a little bit redundant, but you want to note that in the first section is your introduction, your second section, you're looking at the literature review where you will cover such and such theories or concepts. The third section will be your methodology and so on. You just want to have a nice flow to this chapter or section, and then in the end summarize it. So this is a lot of information with bullet points here, but I hope you can see that this should flow very well. These don't necessarily have to be subheadings in the introduction. You can write this in a narrative form with paragraphs. You want to make sure that as you do this, you still have your citations in there if needed, and quote anything that you're citing so that you're not plagiarizing. So that's your introduction. The literature review is a little bit longer, and frankly, I usually start with the literature review because until I have done my research, I don't really know what to put in my introduction. So it's a misnomer that the introduction comes first, but I like to start with the literature review. So let's say you have your topic, and if you don't have a topic, you can look at the first video in this series to pick a topic, but you have your topic, you want to describe the theoretical framework, any concepts and theories related to your research question, any other studies that are related to your research question, as well as their recommendations for future research. And that's what really gives you the credibility with your study, the significance of your study, because you're saying that other scholars did some work and that they've recommended that someone else do this other work, and that your study is in fact going to do that. Also in the literature review, you want to include any control variables that were recommended by other scholars. And again, you can watch the literature review video, but we cover that quite in depth, and I give you a recommendation for an article to give you more information about control variables that are often overlooked as being very important, but they are very important, and they can help to make your study quite robust if done well. Also in the literature review, you'll include your research question and the hypotheses. So we want to have those clearly defined, and this gives you the parameters for your study. It's almost like guardrails. The research question says, this is what I'm trying to solve for, and the hypotheses lay out a very scientific approach to what you think is going to happen with that research question. In this, we will also reiterate the significance of your study. Again, some of those, that terminology could be that you're filling a gap or you're extending the field of study. Either way, you just want to make sure that you are justifying that your project is worthy of someone else's attention. Then you can define terms, if necessary, in the literature review as well. Okay, the methods section. In this, we look at the research method. Is it going to be quantitative or qualitative? The research design, will it be cross-sectional or longitudinal? The sampling, will you do a convenience sample or a snowball sample? The instrumentation, what type of instrument will you use? Some of the common phrases in quantitative research could be that you're using a survey, an instrument, or a questionnaire. If you're doing qualitative, maybe you're doing an interview or a focus group. The data collection is basically, how are you going to collect your data? Are you going to send it out in an online format and somebody just clicks on a link and then they fill out the survey? Are you going to have people come into a focus group and then you'll do it in person? Maybe you'll give an incentive like a gift card. All of that needs to be addressed here in the data collection. And then your analysis. In the data analysis, there's lots of options, and it will depend on what you're trying to solve for. With a correlation, you're trying to see if two variables are related to one another. In a study that I did recently, I looked at the fruit of the spirit. It was a brand new scale, and I wanted to find out if it was related to the workplace outcomes of employee engagement, job satisfaction, and organizational commitment. So I first wanted to see, are they even related? And once I found out that they are, I wanted to see, could they predict those desired workplace outcomes? So that moves it from correlation to regression. And there's plenty of text out there to help you with picking which analysis is best for your study. In the methods section, you also want to have something about strengths and weaknesses for your design. So some of the strengths could be that you're using a validated instrument that's been used, hundreds of times. So you know that you have a really good instrument. Some of the weaknesses could be that you have a small data set or a small participant pool. Maybe your participant pool is all one demographic. They're all in one zip code, or that they're all female or all male, or they're all a certain age. So you want to have your study so that it's generalizable to a broader population. And usually that's addressed there in the weakness section. Okay, so a difference between a proposal and the final project is your tense. You use a future tense for your proposal, which again are the first 3 chapters. So your introduction, literature review, and the methods section. And you're saying, this is what I'm going to do. If you've already done it, then you go back and change that to a past tense. Okay, so we have to stop here because once you get your proposal written, you need to submit it for approval. Depending on your school, you may submit it for Human Subject Review Board or an Institutional Review Board approval. Basically what that means is you're not going to hurt anybody in the process and that you have an ethical code of conduct and that everything's above board. Once the committee takes a look at your proposal, again, those first 3 chapters or sections, they may come back to you with recommendations to improve your study. So this is a great opportunity for you to have other scholars taking a look at your study before you've done it. Go ahead and make those changes and then send it back to them if necessary. Once it's finally approved, then you can move on to the next section. Okay, so the results section. At this point, you have the HSRB or IRB approval. You've actually done the study. Now you get to report on the results. Basically, in this section, it's pretty straightforward. You want an objective report of the study. You don't want to insert any bias into this. You want to just say that based on your findings, this is what happened. Again, you can list any strengths and limitations. Usually with a research project, you will find out that, oops, things could have been better. Things could have been different. So you want to include that in this section of next time we do the study, whether it's me or someone else, they should do it this other way. So you want to include that there. And that goes along with recommendations for future research. Let's say that your study did only include one demographic. Perhaps it was all females 43 years of age in a certain zip code. And you think, well, that's great. We can apply the results to that very, very small demographic. So future research should also include male and female in multiple states or countries or even continents and multiple age ranges. So you want to line that out in your results section. With this, you also want to go through it and basically walk step by step through your project of what analysis you did, what your findings were, what that resulted with your hypotheses. Did you accept your hypothesis or reject it? All right. And then in your discussion section, this is really the first time that you, as the researcher, get to have a say-so in the paper, because up until this point, it's been what other scholars have done, what they've recommended, what the findings came out. Now you get to interpret those results. And when you interpret them, you can say that this certain result will help with a theoretical perspective or a practical perspective. You want to also recap the results as you go through this process, and then encourage any next steps that needs to happen with this specific project or with future projects. Okay, so we've gone over the 5 sections or chapters with your research project, but there's a little bit more. When you're all finished with this, you'll want to write up an abstract, which is about 150 to 250 words, and that goes on the very front of your paper. Well, you'll have your cover page, but then you'll have your abstract. And the purpose of the abstract is basically a synopsis of what happened. It's a way for somebody to look at this short paragraph and say, oh, this applies to what I'm looking for. It's worth my time to read the rest of the paper. Or they read it and they say, ooh, this is not what I wanted, so I don't need to read this paper. It also can include keywords. You want to add keywords to help with an SEO search. So the keywords will basically be maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 keywords that are the main words in your paper. And that will be there with your abstract or on your cover page. It depends on the formatting of what you're doing. Again, the Human Subject Review Board, we talked a little bit about that, but that's important. So that's a separate form that you'll have to fill out while you're doing this. And then you'll also want to include references, a reference page, and if you have any appendix or addendums that you need to add to your paper, you'll include that. Okay, well, I hope this has been helpful. This is just your overview of the research project in general, each of the 5 sections or chapters. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. I'd love to help.